So thank you again for being here. In my short talk, I'm just trying to give you some idea how the engineering education at Sonoma State University have been kind of designed to get the students to be more involved and engaged in projects such as what you have heard so far, or really some of the high-impact real-world projects. I think it's interesting and very important to understand that, you heard about these amazing and unbelievable projects that people are doing around the world, but it's also important to realize, where did these people that made these things come from? How were they skilled to do things like that? And that aspect of it is extremely important, and that's where we come from as educators who educate engineers in general. And in order to really be able to put people in positions and give them the right skills to do these wonderful things, it's really the underlying education that becomes extremely important. And it is the bonding between the education and the community and the local industry that makes this happen. And that's really where we come in. Specifically about Sonoma State, I think it's important to understand where we are positioned compared to other universities around us. We are probably one of the youngest and smallest engineering program throughout the North Bay community, which is serving growing student population from counties such as Napa, Sonoma, Marin, and Mendocino. Over the years, what we've been trying to do is rather than just sort of just giving theory and math skills to educate engineers, we have created these new layers, which we're trying to combine the theory and engineering practice with the actual community-based and service learning experience. So in our philosophy is basically connecting the engineering education with something that really matters to students. And rather than limiting the students to only these 2 hours chunk of lab times, we actually try to encourage them to look into the campus and their community as the big picture, as the big lab. So this concept of living with the lab, which we're promoting in our program, is really more than anything else to kind of get the understanding for students to see everything can be modified, that the skills or that the level of skills that they have gained through the courses that they have learned, it really can mean something to change their environment, to change their campus, to change the way they live. And that's really where this engineering education can become really useful. I just wanted to point out Chris mentioned that he was actually teaching a math, sort of this computer programming class that the students were engaged in real-world projects such as analyzing real-world data or fire data, for example, and those are some of his students. To that end, consequently, when we actually tell the students, and encourage them to get their activities, their skills, and to connect them with their real environment, there are a lot of interesting projects comes out. And in particular, at Sonoma State, a lot of the projects that our students are involved in are generally kind of fit in one of these 4 categories, such as environmental monitoring, Internet of Things, smart city, alternative energy. So in the following slides, I just want to give you kind of a taste of what these students are doing and just give you some examples of what's happening around campus, specifically when it comes to interdisciplinary engineering projects. So over the past several years, as Claudia mentioned, one of the really coolest things that's happened is that a lot of our students, more than 25 students from engineering, more than 25 of our graduate students ended up doing their project, the senior design project, or what's called capstone project, in the Fairfield Osborne Preserve, which is a kind of a natural land very close to the campus. So as a result of that, our students, as a part of their final project, they ended up installing off-grid solar systems, for example, or they ended up creating this really interesting fully functional weather station. Or right now they're actually working on underground wireless sensors, which is being funded by the Berkeley Lab. In addition to that, recently, about a month ago, we had a group of students that actually went to Washington. Their project was basically to contribute to the concept of smart city. To that end, these students were proposing, or designing rather, the deployment of an advanced flood warning system for the city of Rohnert Park. Currently, they have actually been asked to go back to Austin and demonstrate a prototype of that project. And if they go there and if they get enough support from the city officials, particularly in the city of Rohnert Park, they can actually apply for a really good chunk of funding in order to continue with their project. So having this collaboration, again, of our university, our student, with city officials, or local industry, and the community in general can become really important in terms of making these projects sustainable overall. This is another project that some of our students have been working. This is kind of like, this started with collaboration between the engineering department and the biology department and a winery in Santa Rosa. Our students in particular, their task was basically creating a monitoring system such that we can monitor the activity of these microbial fuel cells which have been installed in Santa Rosa winery. Again, this is another example of how the student projects are being presented in the context of something that is real, useful, and has high impact. And finally, I kind of wanted to show you this because I hope you get a chance and you actually go during the presentation, you can talk to some of our students, not only about their project, but also about this particular creative data center that we have created. And basically, we have been able, over the past couple of years, we have been able to store and display all of these projects that I talked about. They all generate data. So this project in particular is basically based on gathering all that data and storing it and displaying it to our students. This is particularly useful because you kind of give a meaning to all of these projects together. You put them all together and you make a story. And then the student needs to see the story. It's like, what's the point of this? That's the only thing that's the first thing they probably ask you. But through this data center, we're trying to give them a big picture. And that's where all of these things that they're doing come together. And in addition to that, we make this public, right? So everyone from the community can come and see what the students have been doing. And I think this could be a very useful tool to engage other students, probably not necessarily perhaps non-STEM students. Sometimes ago, I remember we had this student project which they were making these little gadgets that anybody can put on their bicycle, and as they are riding wherever they're going, it can actually gather these environmental data. And then we showed that to some philosophy students, and they thought this is really the coolest thing, and it just wasn't even difficult to build it. You know, if you give them the basic understanding of how things work, you enable them to create these gadgets. So to connect the students to the technology is really an important part of what we do. And I hope you get a chance and you actually go on this site and then take a look at it. There are really cool movies that you can see with respect to how the moon in the morning goes away, the sun comes, and then again, sun goes out and the moon comes. So there are really some cool stuff that you can find out on this webpage. We've been really fortunate with respect to getting really good partners and helping us with respect to a number of things, such as providing mentorship, internship, equipment, and expertise. Overall, we see our role as being able to provide talent and a skilled workforce to the community. And I think in order to make this sustainable, it is important that we actually get feedback from the community. That feedback will be based on giving us the real-world project and engaging us in their activity and getting our students interested in whatever they are doing. And to create this loop, I think that's how we can make this engineering education sustainable. I was doing this, I don't exactly know what the state of mind that I was when I created this slide. I showed it to my wife and she said, are you making a machine here? But anyway, the point of this slide, although it may seem very complex, but the idea is to create a sustainable society society with sustainable growth, you need to have a lot of smart technology, you have these smart city. But the underlying factor to create all of these things are smart people. Not just technically smart, but people who are culturally competent. We can create the smartest app in the world, but if people are not inclined to use it, it's not going to be useful. So not only we have to create and bring this culture of understanding the importance of how to connect technology and environment, but we should also create these skilled people. And that's really where engineering education comes from. So we hope that we can talk to you after this, and we see you during the project presentation. Thank you.